Ever flushed your toilet only to hear that annoying hissing sound that just won't quit? Maybe you've jiggled the handle a dozen times hoping it would stop, or you've laid awake at night listening to water trickle into the bowl every few minutes. A running toilet isn't just irritating, it can waste up to 200 gallons of water a day, and that adds up fast on your water bill. The good news is that fixing a running toilet is one of the easiest plumbing repairs you can do yourself. And I'm going to walk you through every possible cause and solution today. Plus, stick around to the end, where I'll show you a simple trick that can help you spot a silent leak you might not even know you have. Let's dive in and get that toilet fixed. A running toilet is something almost every homeowner deals with at some point. And once you understand what's happening inside that tank, you'll realize there's nothing mysterious about it. The repair usually takes 15 to 20 minutes, costs just a few dollars in parts, and requires only basic tools. So let's start by understanding how your toilet tank actually works. When you look inside your toilet tank, you're going to see a few key parts that all work together. First, there's the fill valve. That's the tall piece on the left side of the tank that brings fresh water in after you flush. Connected to the fill valve, you'll find some type of float, which tells the fill valve when to stop filling. This could be a float cup that slides up and down on the fill valve itself, or it could be an old-fashioned float ball on an arm. Then you've got the flush valve in the center of the tank. That's the large opening at the bottom with a flapper covering it. When you push the handle, a chain lifts the flapper. Water rushes into the bowl, and then the flapper drops back down to seal the tank so it can refill. Finally, there's the overflow tube, which is that vertical pipe sticking up in the middle. Its job is to send excess water into the bowl if the tank overfills, preventing a flood. When any of these parts malfunction, you end up with a running toilet. Now that you know the players, let's get to work. Before you do anything else, you want to shut off the water supply to the toilet. Look behind the toilet near the floor, and you'll see an oval-shaped handle or a small lever. That's your shutoff valve. Turn it clockwise until it stops. On most valves, that's about a quarter turn to a half turn. If you have an older gate valve with a round handle, you might need to turn it several full rotations. Once the water is off, flush the toilet to drain most of the water out of the tank. This gives you a clear view of everything inside and keeps you from getting splashed while you work. I also like to lay down an old towel behind the toilet just in case any water drips down. Now, before we go any further, let me tell you about the tools you'll need. You're going to want a flathead screwdriver, a Phillips head screwdriver, and a pair of wire cutters or snips, something that can cut through the chain. That's it. 3 simple tools that you probably already have in your toolbox. If you're going to replace any parts, a universal flapper runs about $5, and a universal fill valve costs around $10 to $12. But let's see if we can fix what you've got first. The number one cause of a running toilet is a worn-out flapper. This is the rubber piece that sits on top of the flush valve and creates a seal to hold water in the tank. Over time, flappers get warped, cracked, or coated with mineral deposits. And when that happens, water slowly leaks past them into the bowl. Here's how to check yours. With the tank drained, reach down and feel the flapper. It should be smooth and flexible. If it feels stiff, slimy, or you can see visible cracks or warping, it's time to replace it. Sometimes you'll notice a little ridge or indentation worn into the rubber where it sits against the flush valve seat. That's a sure sign it's not sealing properly anymore. To remove the old flapper, simply unhook the chain from the flush handle lever and then pull the flapper ears off the pegs on either side of the flush valve. Some flappers have a ring that slides over the overflow tube instead of ears. Just lift that ring up and off. Take your old flapper to the hardware store so you can match it up, or grab a universal flapper that's adjustable to fit most toilets. When you install the new one, hook the ears onto the pegs or slide the ring over the overflow tube. Then reattach the chain to the handle lever. I'll tell you exactly how much slack to leave in just a moment. One thing I've learned over the years: don't buy the cheapest flapper on the shelf. Spend the extra $1 or $2 for a quality one, and it'll last you 5 to 7 years instead of 2. Now, let's talk about that chain, because this is something a lot of folks overlook. The chain connects your flapper to the toilet handle, and if it's too long, it can get caught underneath the flapper when you flush. When that happens, water leaks right past the flapper and into the bowl, and your toilet runs constantly trying to refill the tank. I've seen this dozens of times. The flapper looks perfectly fine, but there's too much chain bunched up and it's getting pinched in the seal. Here's the fix. You want just enough slack in the chain so the flapper can close completely, but not so much that it can tangle or get trapped. I shoot for about 1/2 an inch of slack when the flapper is fully seated. Lift the flapper up and let it drop a few times to make sure the chain moves freely and doesn't catch on anything. If you got a lot of excess chain, use your wire cutters to trim it down, leaving just a couple extra links in case you need to make adjustments later. This simple fix takes about 30 seconds, and it solves the problem more often than you'd think. By the way, if you're finding this helpful so far, take a second to subscribe so you don't miss future videos. All right, let's keep going. If your flapper and chain look good but your toilet is still running, the next thing to check is the water level in your tank. Look at the overflow tube, that vertical pipe in the center of the tank. If water is spilling into that tube, your tank is overfilling, and all that excess water is going right down into the bowl. The water level should sit about 1/2 an inch to 1 inch below the top of the overflow tube. If it's higher than that, you need to adjust your float. Now, there are a few different types of floats, so let me walk you through each one. If you have a newer toilet, chances are you've got a float cup. This is a small cylinder that wraps around the fill valve and slides up and down on it. As the tank fills, the float cup rises with the water level, and when it reaches a certain height, it triggers the fill valve to shut off. If your water level is too high, you need to lower the float cup so it triggers the shutoff sooner. Look for a small adjustment screw or clip on the side of the fill valve, usually connected to a thin rod that runs down to the float cup. On most models, you'll turn this screw counterclockwise to lower the float, but check your specific valve because some work the opposite way. Make small adjustments, about a 1/2 turn at a time, then turn the water back on and let the tank fill to see where the water level ends up. Keep adjusting until the water sits that 1/2 inch to 1 inch below the overflow tube. I like to use a permanent marker to draw a line on the inside of the tank at my target water level so I can see exactly where it needs to stop. Now, if you've got an older toilet, you might have a float ball instead of a float cup. This is that big round ball on the end of a metal arm that sticks out from the fill valve. The principle is the same. As the water rises, the ball floats up and eventually triggers the fill valve to stop. If your water level is too high with this setup, you need to lower the float ball. There are two ways to do this. First, look for an adjustment screw where the float arm connects to the fill valve. Turning this screw clockwise will lower the angle of the arm and, in turn, lower the float ball. The adjustment is subtle, so give it a few full turns and then test. If there's no adjustment screw, or if the screw doesn't give you enough range, you can actually bend the float arm slightly downward. Just grip the arm in the middle with both hands and apply gentle pressure. Don't go crazy. A small bend makes a big difference. Now, there's a third type you might encounter called a diaphragm fill valve. These are older brass units with a bonnet on top and a float arm similar to the float ball style. The adjustment screw is usually right on top of the bonnet. Turn it clockwise to lower the float arm and reduce the water level in the tank. Same idea, just a different mechanism. Whatever type of float you have, the goal is the same. Get that water level sitting 1/2 inch to 1 inch below the overflow tube, and your toilet should stop running. All right, you've made your repairs. Now it's time to test everything and make sure that toilet is working properly. Turn the water supply back on by turning the shutoff valve counterclockwise. You'll hear the tank start to fill. Watch the water level as it rises and make sure it stops at the right height. Remember, 1/2 inch to 1 inch below the overflow tube. Once the tank is full, flush the toilet and watch what happens. The flapper should lift cleanly. The water should rush into the bowl, and then the flapper should drop back down and seal completely. Listen closely. You shouldn't hear any hissing, trickling, or water running after the tank finishes filling. If everything sounds quiet, give it about 5 minutes and then check again. Sometimes a slow leak won't be obvious right away. I like to put a few drops of food coloring in the tank water and wait 15 minutes without flushing. If any color shows up in the bowl, you've still got a leak somewhere, most likely the flapper. But if the bowl water stays clear, congratulations, you fixed your running toilet. Let's talk about what to do if you've tried everything and your toilet is still running. First, double check that flapper. Even a brand new flapper can be defective or might not be the right fit for your particular toilet. Some toilets, especially newer high-efficiency models, require a specific flapper designed for that brand. If you installed a universal flapper and it's still leaking, try getting the exact replacement part from the toilet manufacturer. Second, inspect the flush valve seat. That's the ring the flapper sits on. Run your finger around it and feel for any mineral buildup, corrosion, or rough spots. If the seat isn't smooth, the flapper can't seal properly, no matter how new it is. You can try cleaning the seat with a scrub pad or fine steel wool. If it's badly corroded, you might need to replace the entire flush valve, which is a bigger job, but still doable for a determined DIY or for. Third, check the fill valve itself. Here's a quick test. With the tank full, lift up on the float arm or float cup manually. The water should stop running immediately. If it doesn't, or if it only slows down, your fill valve is worn out and needs to be replaced. A universal fill valve costs about $10 to $12, and swapping one out takes maybe 20 minutes. Fourth, make sure the refill tube, that small flexible tube coming off the fill valve, is positioned correctly. It should clip onto the overflow tube and direct a small stream of water down into it during the refill cycle. If this tube is shoved too far down into the overflow tube, it can create a siphon effect that causes constant running. The end of the tube should sit just above the overflow tube, not inside it. Finally, if you have an older toilet and nothing seems to work, it might be time to consider replacing the whole toilet. Modern toilets use about 1.6 gallons per flush compared to 3 to 5 gallons for older models. You'll save water, stop dealing with constant repairs, and have a toilet that actually works the way it should. Now for that bonus tip I promised you at the beginning. Here's something most people don't know. Your toilet could be leaking and you might not even hear it. It's called a silent leak, and it happens when the flapper lets water seep into the bowl so slowly that you never notice the sound. But over time, this can waste thousands of gallons of water and cost you real money. Here's how to test for it. Get some food coloring or a dye tablet. They actually sell toilet leak detection tablets at the hardware store for about $1. Drop the dye into your tank water, don't flush, and wait 15 to 20 minutes. If the water in the bowl changes color, you've got a silent leak. In most cases, replacing the flapper will fix it. I do this test once a year on every toilet in my house, and I recommend you do the same. It takes 2 minutes and can save you from a sneaky water bill surprise. This is one of those simple maintenance tasks that really pays off. So that's everything you need to know about fixing a running toilet. We covered the flapper, the chain, the float, all the usual suspects, plus how to test your repairs and troubleshoot if things still aren't right. If you found this helpful, make sure to subscribe and hit that bell icon so you get notified when new videos come out. And if you got any questions or your own tips to share, drop them in the comments below. I always love hearing from you folks. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. And hey, don't forget, a quiet toilet is a happy toilet. Now go enjoy that peace and quiet.